What if I told you that one of the greatest presidents in American history once nearly got chopped in half with a sword because of a sarcastic joke? Yes, Abraham Lincoln, Honest Abe, the man on the penny, almost died in a duel, and all because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. Before we dive into this unbelievable true story, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and comment below with your city or country. I want to know where in the world you're watching from. Now let's go back to 1842. Long before Abraham Lincoln became a household name, before the Gettysburg Address or the Emancipation Proclamation, he was just a tall, lanky young lawyer trying to find his way in Springfield, Illinois. He was clever, brilliant even, but he had one fatal flaw. He had a sharp tongue, and he loved to use it, especially in writing. You see, back then, newspapers weren't just for reporting news. They were the Twitter of their time. People used them to settle scores, throw shade, and deliver verbal punches, under fake names, of course. And Lincoln? He had a taste for satire, so when a pompous politician named James Shields strutted around town like he owned it, Lincoln couldn't resist. Lincoln, under the pen name Rebecca, wrote a letter to the Springfield Journal. But this wasn't just any letter. It was a brutal roast, a total mockery of Shields, portraying him as a vain, foolish man who couldn't get a date if he tried. The townsfolk roared with laughter, but Shields, not so much. The man was livid, and like any self-respecting offended gentleman in the 1800s, he challenged the writer, whoever Rebecca was, to a duel with swords. Deadly, shiny, slice-your-opponent-in-half swords. Now here's the thing. At first, Shields didn't know it was Lincoln, but people talked, and Lincoln, ever the honest one, eventually admitted to it, and that's when things got real. Now let's pause for a second. Abraham Lincoln was a lot of things. Tall, smart, witty, but a fighter? A sword master? No. This wasn't a bar fight. This was an official, potentially deadly duel, with a man who was smaller, angrier, and reportedly a better fencer. So Lincoln did something brilliant. Under the rules of the duel, the challenged party, Lincoln, got to choose the weapons and the terms. So he chose cavalry broadswords. Massive, heavy, ridiculous. And he added one more detail. They would duel on a plank, a narrow piece of wood, with a pit on either side. Step off the plank and you fall. Get hit by the sword and, well, say goodbye to your torso. Here's the kicker. Lincoln had one big advantage. Literally, he was 6'4", with long, lanky arms. His reach was enormous. So when the duel day arrived and the two men stood face to face, Lincoln, calmly, strategically, lifted his sword and chopped a branch clean off a tree above Shields' head. Didn't touch Shields, but the message was clear. If I wanted to, you'd be in two pieces by now. That was all it took. Shields' pride dissolved faster than sugar in hot tea. The duel never happened. Both men walked away, intact, but Lincoln walked away wiser. Now here's where the story turns. This near-death moment stuck with Lincoln. He realized something crucial. Yes, he was funny. Yes, he was clever. But his words, especially in writing, had power, dangerous power. And that power, misused, could kill more than reputations. It could destroy trust, create enemies, invite violence. He told friends later that the incident shamed him, that from then on, he would be more mindful of how he used his words. And he meant it. Lincoln, the man who had once mocked others from behind a pen name, became known for his kindness, his humility, and, above all, his ability to speak truth without cruelty. Even in the White House during the darkest days of the Civil War, he treated political opponents with dignity. He told stories instead of insults. He used wit to connect, not to tear down. And maybe, just maybe, it all started with that duel that never happened. Flash forward 2 decades. Lincoln, now president, faced enemies every day. Congressmen who mocked him, generals who ignored him, newspapers that called him an ape. But he didn't challenge them to duels. He didn't write scathing letters to humiliate them. He led with grace. He led with patience. There's a famous story of Lincoln receiving a harsh letter from an angry citizen. Most people would have ignored it, or worse, responded in fury. Lincoln? He invited the man to the White House, shook his hand, listened, because he had learned something powerful. Winning people isn't about crushing them, it's about lifting them. Now you're probably thinking, that's a cool old story, but what does a 19th century sword duel have to do with me? More than you think. Today we have our own version of duels. We fire off emails, tweets, DMs, comments, sometimes sharp, sometimes sarcastic, sometimes just like Lincoln's old letter, we write something to be funny, and someone else bleeds from it. But here's what Lincoln learned the hard way. You don't need to fight to be powerful. You don't need to mock to be heard. You don't need to cut people down to stand tall. And when you're tempted to win an argument with a perfectly placed insult, remember the young man with a sword in his hand, realizing too late that he'd rather be kind than be clever. In Dale Carnegie's book, he says Lincoln never again wrote a letter in anger. If he was upset, he'd write it, but never send it. He'd leave it in his desk, sometimes forever. That might be the smartest thing anyone ever did. Imagine if we all did that today, wrote it, reread it, and then let it go. Because here's the truth. Words are weapons. They can heal or they can hurt. And like Lincoln learned on the edge of that dueling plank, one moment of anger isn't worth a lifetime of regret. So next time someone pushes your buttons, take a breath, put down the sword, pick up your better self. If this story moved you or made you think, hit that like button right now. Subscribe for more historical life lessons and true stories that actually matter. And in the comments, tell me, have you ever written something in anger that you later regretted? Let's talk about it below. Let's grow together. Thanks for watching. And remember, the smartest thing Lincoln ever did wasn't saving the Union. It was learning how to treat people better than they treated him.